Hello, welcome to Counseling Theories, BIBC 3301. My name is Brady Daniel. I'm going to be instructing you, ladies and gentlemen, this next 7 weeks as we look at the interesting content of counseling theories and techniques. Yes, we are going to learn how to apply them, how to express them, how to be a benefit for you so that as you sit across from men, women, children, families, and marriages, and all the other complexities that didn't fall within those dynamics, which should have been just about everybody, if not everybody. We want to be able to help prepare and empower you to take the next steps in understanding, okay, so what do I do with this? Now, I've had students in the past that may come in with the mindset of, Brady, I only want to do something inside the church. And so really, is there going to be a benefit of this class? And I've had students that have communicated that. And that is perfectly fine to have that mindset. And I completely understand. I've been doing this in the field of counseling for 17 years. I've been in the field of academia for 5. And so I've had the opportunity of getting to teach and apply and counsel for many, many years. Of those 17 years, about 10 of them were actually inside the church, doing pastoral care, freedom and deliverance, children's ministry, what have you. And in that, what I found was when I first started in ministry, I had a similar mindset. Why do I need to know the psychological theories? Why do I need to know these thoughts and research and whatever it may be? When really all I want to do is walk them through biblical applications, helping them understand the voice of God, which is pertinent, which is important, which is the foundation of everything, and then allowing them to know that they're loved, that they're seen, those very crucial validational acceptance orientations, and let them take the next step. Outside of that, what else is there? But what I found in my time in ministry were how many individuals I'd find myself sitting across from, and they would articulate this: Brady, I know that you're here at the church. I know that you want to help, but we don't want anything to do with God. We don't want anything to do with the Bible. But we're here because it's free and because we believe you can help. And the first couple of times that this was communicated to me, I thought, oh no, God, help, which is always a great place to be, is our dependence, our connection, and everything that we have to give the individual sitting across from us should be total dependent upon him and what he is articulating, not only in us, but through us as a clinician. Understanding that we are there to counsel, to magnify and give the imagery of the counselor. And so what I found was going back and looking at a lot of these theoretical concepts, these frameworks, these philosophies, and being able to orient them in a way to meet people where they are. And you may be like, well, Brady, that's great for you. But again, I'm here because it's being asked of, but I'm not sure that this class is really going to be something that's going to be a benefit. And you can have that perspective. You can have that mindset. And you know what? I completely get it. But if we look at the individual named Paul, which we all understand being people of belief, we understand the standpoint of when he came to meet with the Athenians, when he came to these great-minded individuals, the philosophers, the people that were a very cognitive, highly functioning, they just were people of thought. And as a result of that, what did Scripture say he did? He met them where they were, right? They had all these displays of different foreign gods, and Paul could have come in there, thrown over tables, and just making just messing up all the different imageries of their gods. But what did he do? He didn't do that. He met them where they were, waited for his opportunity, and then as a result of that, the way I understood it, who is this God? Well, this is the God of the unknown. Okay, cool. Do you want to know his name? He waited for an opportunity to meet people, for his opportunity to be able to articulate what God had put in him. For a time and season such as this. Why? Because Scripture says that some of those individuals of well thought accepted Jesus. Wow. Well, Brady, really? Yes, it can happen. I can't tell you how many individuals that I get to meet with. Of course, my foundation, again, if you look at my website, Personal Private Practice, you'll see that everything orients from the standpoint of this foundation of God, or the orientation of hearing him, allowing him to breathe through everything that we do, all those different things. But I get so many opportunities to meet with people who would never never want anything to do with God. And as a result of that, based upon how God has revealed Scripture to me to be able to articulate them universally and use a lot of theoretical frameworks that this individual articulates, and that as a result of that, I've gotten to a place where I've gotten to lead individuals. Not only to point back to him, but to be a place where people would go back to church when they hadn't been to church in 10, 12, 15 years. That's what we're here for. We are pastors. Now, some of us will actually have the title of pastor. And again, if that is you, awesome. If you're going into chaplaincy, inside the hospital, inside the police department, whatever area you're going to be a chaplain, you're a pastor. If you're going into private practice, into the psychiatric hospitals, whatever it may be, you're there to pastor. And one of the great things is to meet people where they are. Well, Brady, I don't think I can help individuals if they just don't want to. Well, okay, that's your perspective. And I know I've jumped off, but really kind of given a foundation of why I'm so passionate about counseling techniques and how they integrate, right? That's going to be a word that we use very often, the idea of integration. Integrating, and the author of Sin and Grace does a phenomenal job talking about integration. That's one of the reasons why I wanted you to read that book. We're going to not talk about it as much, so please don't tune that out, because you never know when you might find an assignment or a Blackboard discussion talking about the content that you're going to find in Sin and Grace. So please don't just disregard that resource because you don't think that we're going to utilize it as much. No, it is necessary and needed, at least from my perspective, in your development as a clinician, as a pastor, as a chaplain, or whatever it is that God has for you. So make sure you familiarize yourself with the syllabus. Make sure you are aware of everything that we're going to be asking of you. I know that 7 weeks is a sprint the entire time. There's really not an opportunity to catch your breath. But if you find yourself in a time where, oh my goodness, Brady, this is too much because of something external, right? Something that happens that you were unaware of, contact me. Again, this is a very grace-oriented university. Now with that, we want to make sure that people don't take advantage of that, right? Have you had that happen before? Yes. Okay, I will be as grace-filled as the next individual. But in that, I want you to not wait, oh, Brady, I know the assignment was done yesterday, but here's what happened. Hey, if you know something's going on, now if that situation happens and there's no way to get around that, okay, then still contact me and let me know. But please, please, please don't take advantage of that. Familiarize yourself. We've got a lot of reading, a lot of content. We have some mock counseling sessions. Those are going to be done. And I can't wait to read your synopsis of them. A lot of times people, Brady, that is very, it was awkward. Okay. Well, guess what? If we're going to be called to sit in front of other individuals, we might as well get over that awkwardness now, so that therefore when we actually walk into a room and there's an individual there that is in need of what it is that God is going to deposit in you and through you, let's get all that awkwardness out now. That's why a lot of the applicational processes within this curriculum, not only in this class, but the rest of your degree plan, is to get you ready for the field. Bring in the field to you here at TKU. So have any questions, let me know. This week, Blackboard discussion, I want you to tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me who you are. Tell me where you came from. Tell me what degree plan you're in. Are you in ministry? Are you in biblical counseling? What do you want to do with that? What do you feel like God's calling you to? And so in this, we're wanting to break down the barrier of distance learning, and Blackboard is one of the great ways to be able to do that. So I want you to engage. Don't just give me bullet points, right? Oh, he asked for where I'm from. I'm from Memphis, Tennessee. Okay, well, you don't have to elaborate on everything, but here's the thing. I'm a very contextual thinker. I want the context to your content, okay? It helps me, and not only that, but it helps other individuals, and it helps you to be able to formalize the response to the questions that we're asking. So please, please, please take advantage, or not only take advantage of that, but you'll be graded on it. Week 1, part one. So in that, the book is actually broken up into 3 different parts. The first part is really an overview of counseling and psychotherapy. In there's different definitions. It talks about treatments, things of that nature. Then they go into an overview of the theories. They go into, talking about existential, Hungarian, reality, behavior, Gestalt. And we're going to spend the rest of the semester actually talking about these individually. So we're not going to go into those to the extreme, at least in this very moment, but read those, because I think that the first chapter, they do a great job from a synopsis orientation. And so in this class, one of the things that you're going to be asked to do, I'm going to leave that one alone, is what do you believe in? Well, Brady, I believe in Jesus. Fantastic. But as you walk through these psychological orientations, what theory fits you like the glove to the hand, right? The idea, and what you may find is, well, Brady, I like Gestalt, I like this part of it, but I didn't like this, and this, but I like that, and I want to pair it really well with reality therapy. Okay, well, fantastic, you get to do that. And so in this, when I first took theories and techniques back in, it's been a little while, okay? I remember being in grad school and we had to write a paper over which one do you assimilate into who you are and what you want to do as a clinician. And I remember picking reality therapy. I picked reality therapy with some Gestalt techniques. And as a result of that, as I've grown within the last, 17 years in the field, when I read all these, I can find myself fitting some dynamic or taking a piece of the originator of the theory and of being able to apply it. I remember the first time that I actually taught this class many, many years ago, I was like, oh, I didn't even know that was a part of it. I had forgotten. But you find yourself utilizing them. So as you think through this, don't discount the different theories of, well, Brady, I'm a behavioralist. I want to study behavior. I want this to be, in essence, what I do. Okay. Well, if that's your premise, fantastic. Why? What's the context? What drives that? But if you still feel that very passionate about that, then don't discount psychoanalytic. Don't discount Adlerian. Okay, Gestalt, Hungarian, all these different types of orientations. Don't discount them, because they could be a benefit to you and your behavioral. So let's see. He talks about the dynamics of, as you walk through picking your theories, the couple different dynamics that he, the author orients from a couple different individuals' research. But he talks about 4 different quadrants: human nature, the role of environment and personality development, the model of functionality, and personality change. So in that, read that. That's going to be on page 7, because again, that could be the very outlook that you utilize as you are evaluating what theory fits me best. What theory am I going to continue to orient if I am a freshman or sophomore in this program, as I continue to look and have the outlook of all the other projects and assignments that I'm going to take through the rest of my academic career here at TKU. You may be a junior or senior as you get ready to move out. Okay, graduate, fantastic, good for you. Do you go to graduate school? Do you are you called to do something different? But why and what is the lens that you see those theories through? And that page 7 can help out significantly. Page 9, he talks a little bit about the hierarchy and how to differentiate people in the field, right? Which can be extremely helpful, because there are some confusion when you think about somebody that has a PhD and a psychologist, right? The idea of, oh, they have a PhD, so therefore they must be a psychologist. And that can be the fact if it's in psychology, and that they took a psychology test, just like counselors take a NCE, a national counselor exam, and do an internship. Now, can you have the PhD without doing all those extras? Absolutely. Now, can you be a psychologist? Okay, there you go. So it's good to know the differences, and as you think through what it is that you feel like God's calling you to, for you to have a better understanding in case God's calling you to go into psychology. Okay? Chapter 2 talks about the person of the counselor. This is fantastic because one of the things that they look at, that the author takes from Corey, is the idea of the dynamic of the effective therapist have an identity, right? So these are the very quadrants. I'm going to run through them real quick, and then we're going to come back and talk about them. Appreciation for themselves and open to change, making of humor, make mistakes and are willing to admit them, generally live in the present, appreciate the influence of culture, have a sincere interest in welfare of others, possess effective interpersonal skills, become deeply involved in their work and derive meaning from it, and are able to maintain healthy boundaries, okay? So these are great dynamics when you look at the characteristics of effective counselors. And as I look at that, I'm sitting there thinking, man, wow, that is a powerful list. When you think about identity, if I don't have identity, then I can actually be attempting to take something from the individual sitting across from me. If my identity is the need of understanding significance, that is Brady significant? And in that, I may be trying to pull my significance from the other individual by getting them to validate me, to get them to encourage me and pat me on the back, so to say. And as a result of that, regardless of me getting that from God, and regardless of what takes place, making sure that what's in me is an overpour and what it is that I'm communicating to that individual, that I'm not trying to take something from them, but I'm actually trying to pour something into them. Respect and appreciate others. Absolutely. Again, I think for us being believers, if we don't, then what does that communicate in the reflection of who God is in us and what the other individual is seeing? Open to change. If we're not open to change, then we need to go do something different. I'm not sure why we'd be in a profession of understanding the methodology of Jesus is this Greek word called metanoia, which is changing the way that we think, which is change, right? The idea of change. And if we're not open to change, then as a result of that, we probably need to go do something different. Let's see. Make choices that are life-oriented. Absolutely. That dynamic of allowing people to extend life to one another. Okay? Authentic. Absolutely. Sincere and honest. Sounds like a good counselor to me. Must have a sense of humor. The dynamic of knowing when to have humor and when not to, right? Some people will use humor to deflect. Had one of those individuals, today is Friday. And as a result of that, it's okay to joke around, but also understanding and assessing, when are they deflecting? When are they keeping you at bay? So therefore, they don't have to reveal who they are and let you in to the extent, because if they do, that can be scary. So it is good to have a sense of humor, because if not, hearing about devastation and pain all day long for 6, 8, 10 hours, whatever your day looks like, after a while, it can wear on you and you can pick up compassion fatigue. Does it happen? Absolutely. And I'll talk a little bit more about my story just in bits. Why? Because I don't want to make this about me, because this is about you and your educational process. Let's see. Sense of humor, make mistakes, okay? One of the things we understand about Dr. Brene Brown's research in many formations is the idea that we learn significantly through failing, right? The difference between failing in an event and failing as an identity is the idea that we don't attach meaning to ourselves as a result of that. We all learn to walk through falling, right? The idea of being able to get back up with the tenacity of taking another step and learning something. Did you learn something through that failure? If so, then as a result of that, it was significant in your learning process. And we all, as a result of that, need to make mistakes, right? And that's the reason why when you finish up, if you're going in to be a clinician, that you have a supervisor, so that supervisor can help minimize mistakes by helping you through that process as you are gaining the hours and the competency of doing it on your own. Not only to make mistakes, but willing to admit them, right? The idea of confession. Confession is so vital. The idea of saying, I messed up. Because if we try to cover it, more times than not, what we do is we actually make the mess bigger. I remember hearing a story one time, one of my oversights was teaching at Kairos, and he was talking about how his little boy, one time they had hand-scraped wood floors. And he dropped a bag of flour and it busted and went everywhere. And instead of telling his dad, he attempted to try to clean it up instead of admitting and going to dad, because the dad could have done something really quickly to take care of it, but he didn't. So he started trying to clean it up. And so therefore, Theo got a wet rag, and the wet rag made a paste, and the paste was actually getting stuck into the crevices of this wood floor. And when the dad actually saw what was taking place, he's like, son, if you'd have just come to me, guess what? We have this magical thing called a vacuum. We could have taken care of that. So in that, when we recognize mistakes, not only to acknowledge them, but to own them, right? That confession piece is vital, not only for us being believers, but for us in our process of becoming stronger clinicians and counselors. Let's see, generally live in the present. We can't change what we're not aware of. And as a result of that, the dynamic of what the mind does to the body, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, because even though this isn't going to be covered in the psychological theories, the idea of understanding, well, it could. I'd have to go back and actually think through all of them off the top of my head. But the idea that when you think about how our bodies are big data processing centers, right? We're always constantly processing data. And as a result of that, that data, it comes to us. And as a result of that, the very first thing that we experience it through is the filter of our emotions. Right, in Scripture, it says, fear not emotion, for I'm with you, logic. Excuse me. So in that, the idea of the proper neurological channels to go through is always addressing the emotion first and allowing the individual to understand, to validate that, to validate. Why? Because if not, repression happens so that suppression can happen. And as a result of that, they try to go to their logic and or their prefrontal cortex to try to make logical sense of that. We'll talk a little bit more about that and how that creates anxiety, anger, what have you. And so in this, the idea of being in the present. Why? Because when your mind is there to validate means to acknowledge, to see, to hear. And so when the mind sees that the body is feeling pain, the body can't validate it. The body can't interpret it. The body can't even lie to itself. It needs the mind to do this very dynamic. And so when the mind sees the body in pain, if it's not trained to actually acknowledge so that the two can become one, so that their opportunity to be able to move forward, then as a result of that, a defense mechanism takes place. We'll learn a little bit more about defense mechanisms within the psychoanalytic theory within Freud. Okay, there's that name. I know that name typically brings out some controversy. He's actually one of my favorites, not in all things. Please hear that, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But in that, the idea is that the mind doesn't actually validate the body, so the mind and body can be further assimilated as one to be able to move forward. Then what takes place is the mind creates a defense mechanism attempting to try to take the pain off of that body. Well, problem is body doesn't forget until the mind actually validates. So the idea of being in the present helps out significantly within this process. So it's needed and necessary. What else we got? Appreciate the influences of culture. Absolutely. We need to understand the influences of culture. I know that one time when I was early on, I was actually doing my internship. I just passed my exam, my NC exam, and I was helping an individual guy. The guy was brilliant. Formerly was a chemical engineer, and he felt like God was calling him back into counseling, so he did. And at one time, he was interacting with the individual, and he was very loose with his micro skills. And so as a result of that, he'd always throw his feet up on the desk, cross his feet, never as a result of that. And I was up at the front office, and this individual came in. 5 minutes later, he storms out. And I remember thinking, what in the world just happened? And so I walked into the owner's office and said, what happened? He said, man, session was going great, not really sure. But then all of a sudden, something really frustrated him. As we were talking, the dynamic was he threw his shoes up and crossed his feet. And it was very culturally insensitive for the individual that he was seeing, for anybody to show the sole of the shoe to that individual. So we need to not only know the cultural competencies, but also cultural awareness, the dynamic of how to be sensitive. And so in that, it is necessary and needed. Effective interpersonal skills, absolutely. Become deeply involved in their work and derive meaning from it, absolutely. But what I love that is, even though he wants, as a good counselor, wants you to invest your time and energy as a person in this art, he also wants you to, and science, he also wants you to maintain healthy boundaries. If you're not careful, even though you're not careful, you can work 60, 70 hours. What is realistic within this field is the fact of doing somewhere right around 28 to 32 sessions in a given week. Do people do more? Sure. Do people do less? Absolutely. But again, trying to find out what is significant where you can actually take care of you and your family while taking care of the other individual without getting burnt out. Because burnout is significant. So healthy boundaries. So what does it look like? Well, I have a good friend. Doesn't take a session after 4. Doesn't matter what's going on. Doesn't take a session after 4. Has other colleagues that can, but for her, doesn't feel that after 4, guess what? She's done. She is done. So those are, in essence, some of the things that they look at and they say, you know what? These are the things that can be considered as a good clinician. Okay? Corey talks about on page 17, he lists and briefly describes the following issues that novice counselors have: dealing with their anxieties and self-doubts by taking them over with their supervisor and beginning counseling. So dealing with the anxieties. What are the anxieties as you think about and as you close your eyes to utilize the quantum physics orientation, the invisible giving shape to the physical? Oh, Brady, that's not quantum physics. That's actually theology. You're exactly right. But it is the field of science as well, right? That validates what God had already put into place. So as you close your eyes and you envision the idea of sitting across from somebody, what are you feeling right now? What are those anxieties, and what are those anxieties attempting to communicate as a result of that? And self-doubts. Because if I could show you my first video as I reflect back on it, you'd probably be thinking, why in the world are you still counseling? And I'd be like, exactly right. But again, like we talked about, the idea of learning, growing, maturing, evolving from mistakes, from opportunities. As a result of that, guess what? God's called you here. The opportunity to reflect himself as a counselor is going to be there. So continue to stay with it, but also acknowledging what are those anxieties first and foremost. Let's say being themselves and disclosing their own experiences, maintaining proper balance between while hiding behind a professional facade and sharing too much about themselves and burdening a client as a result. The dynamic of that is, you know, when I went through school, the idea of self-rapport was unheard of. But the idea of understanding and helping individuals say, there's powers in numbers. This is why group therapy is vital for them to understand that they aren't a that they're not a freak, right? And again, I don't even like utilizing that terminology, but that's the terminology that gets utilized in my office so much when we help create that dynamic of empathy so that they understand that they're not alone in this dynamic. And so going to school, we were taught to never give self-disclosure. Now, as a result of that, it's more from the standpoint of knowing when and how much, because the dynamic of self-disclosure is it can turn into your counseling session as a result of that. And there are times where people will actually communicate, try to comfort and encourage you as the clinician. Had it last week. Had an individual that continued to feel the need to try to comfort me when she was communicating everything that she had gone through. What would you do? What would you do early on in the idea if someone is trying to, whether it's in good motives or they're deflecting and trying to turn and shape the counseling session to make it about you? Especially if we're self-disclosing to the extent that, guess what, that they are giving that impression, then as a result of that, they're running with it. So we have to be careful. So please hear me. From my perspective, it's not never. It's the idea of knowing when and how much so that therefore it doesn't actually become about you. Avoiding perfectionism. You know what, ladies and gentlemen, there's no such thing as perfectionism. Even though the dynamic is we understand that, but yet we still inspire to be. Inspire to be. There's been times where I've missed it. I remember one time at church, the idea that the individual said something and I took it and I was like, oh, I know where you're going. 5 minutes later, the individual looked up at me and was like, what are we talking about? I was like, well, didn't you mean this? No. Instead of utilizing this tool called active listening and reflecting, I could have taking care of that issue so that I knew exactly what the individual meant so that I could move in the right direction, the direction that needed to be had, instead of taking him down this road, causing further frustrations, only to find myself 5 to 10 minutes later having to apologize. And apologies are needed when we mess up, to the extent of getting him back on the road that it was necessary. Let's see what else. Being honest about their limitations. Guess what? You'll find people within this field that there are people that they'll see and there are people that they won't. Is that okay? Are you okay with that? For you, what is that population? I remember in graduate school, we had a professor that said, what is the one population or populations that you just will not work with? Aren't we supposed to be here to meet anybody and everybody? Yes, but are there a population that you're sitting there thinking, based upon an experience or whatever it may be, I just can't? Is that okay? Is that okay? Because if it's not, guess what? The body knows. How God created the body is the body to be able to lie, boy, puts the body in pressure, puts the body in friction. We always hear about the idea of the spiritual dynamics, but again, we were created 3 in 1, and the dynamic of the beneficiary is the body and how it gets impacted so much. That's why you find people that will specialize in anxiety. As a result of that, they find themselves kind of running in that direction. That's kind of where I fall into, more kind of going in the area of identity, spiritual restoration, integration, and anxiety. Family and marriage, okay? Brady, that's quite a few. Right. But if somebody comes in saying, Brady, I have extreme trauma. Can you help me? Absolutely. But I know some other individuals who specialize in trauma. Okay? What is that population? Understanding your limitations. Used to work with kiddos. Now I know of a few individuals who do play therapy. We refer them out. Why? Because of understanding limitations. Understanding silence. Silence is key. It's amazing as an individual being able to come and allowing confession, the idea of the mind validating to the body through the expression of communication, which is vital. And that's the reason why counseling is actually offered. Because of that, to express, to get that, whatever that is out. And the idea of just sitting there. Silence is huge. A lot of times they'll tell you more. Sometimes it's the idea of allowing God to move. If I'm constantly running at the pace of Usain Bolt in the session and never actually stop and pause and utilize this tool called silence, then I could actually be inhibiting something that is necessary and needed in that very session. Silence. Dealing with the demands of clients. This is where it goes back to earlier when the author was talking about having healthy boundaries. What does that look like? And early on, it may seem almost near impossible, the idea of setting boundaries and understanding how to deal with demanding clients. Why? Because there's such a zealousness of the idea of, Brady, I'm called to help. I want to help. Great. But know what those boundaries are too. Why? Because they're to protect you and to protect them. And it's necessary and needed. Dealing with clients who lack commitment. Well, that's difficult. Individuals. You're constantly giving homework. They're constantly sitting there. And they're not participating. Okay, well, Brady, are they overwhelmed? Are they in shock? Okay, that's one dynamic. But what if it's the idea that we're constantly, it feels like we're hitting the same threshold, and as a result of that, you're working with them, you're helping them understand techniques and context and all these different complexities that are being beneficial. You're giving them tools, but they just will still not do it. What do you do? What do you do? What do you do? Avoiding losing in their clients, for example, worrying too much about them or taking too much responsibility for them. God, ladies and gentlemen, the idea of ownership is impactful. If you take it away from them, they won't have it to actually be able to move forward. Seems so insensitive. I understand that. When I'm working with counselors and helping train them, and the idea of somebody saying something and you feel them wanting to reach over there and grab it and take that from them, I want to reach and slap their hands. Now, of course, I don't do that physically, but the idea is like, do not take that. Brady, we're supposed to be called to carry one another's burdens. Yes. How? Not like that. Because if you take it away from them, they won't own it. If they won't own it, how are they going to be able to repent and move forward if they don't have it to own? So the idea of being able to own it, and as a result of that, working harder than they are, as a result of that, if they haven't bought into the process, then are they going to see the transformation and the change that they want? Developing a sense of humor that's appropriate. We talked a little bit about that. Sharing responsibilities with the client, right? The idea of them having ownership, vested interest in this. The idea of like, well, Brady, I'm here. I paid you your money, your fee, so therefore you do all the work. It's like, no. Tell people all the time, I can help you challenge your thoughts. I can help you process your emotions. But the one thing I can't do is I can't will it for you. That's you. And the people who walk out of here differently, it's because they engage their will through an understanding of awareness to willingness, and engaging their will to the extent of being able to take a step and another step and another step to the point that they actually start seeing the change. That's their part. I can't do it for them. Declining and giving to give advice all the time. Again, there are some clinicians and counselors that actually give advice. Others that don't. I stem on the latter. Why? Because to me, I want to empower them to understand that one of the greatest things and the most powerful things God's given them is a mind to think. Now, through that, we'll talk through the possibilities of, hey, let's talk through this possibility. Okay, what are the positives? What are the negatives? What are the potentials of the benefit based upon knowing the goals that you have? Let's talk through that. But the idea of me sitting there saying, hey, it's their life. Now, you get to determine, are you a clinician? Are you a counselor that gives that advice? And if so, great. I know some counselors that do, and they do a phenomenal job. You get to determine. You get to determine. This isn't about me indoctrinating you. This is us talking through this content to determine, defining their role as a counselor. What is your role as a counselor, right? And it goes back to the idea, do I give advice? Here, Corey actually says the idea of giving advice all the time. Learning to use techniques appropriately. And making sure that they fit the dynamic. That's why we're going to talk through all these techniques throughout this semester, 7 weeks, so that you have a good understanding of, is this a good fit? Because maybe the theory I have is not the one size fits all like I anticipated. Maybe it is. Developing your own counseling style. What does that look like? Mine is, if you took all of these and kind of wadded them together in one, you'd probably have something probably similar to what I do. The author of Sin and Grace introduces this concept of integrational psychology. That's what I do. Integrational counseling. That's what I do. The idea of understanding the spirit, soul, body, and how do we morph them all back into, again, that's not my role, that's God's role, but the dynamic of what we do plays a role. Staying alive as a professional. The burnout rate, if all you're doing for 6 to 8 to 10 hours a day is hearing about people's depravity, their pain, then you can imagine after a while of how it impacts you. I remember one time in ministry, I was seeing, I don't know how many people, way too many. And at the time, people kept saying, hey, Brady, are you okay? I'm like, I'm great. Every time I go out in the lobby, I see another individual that's waiting for you. Yeah. No, this is a church, so it's a little bit different. Okay. So you're seeing a ton of people. Yep, man, God's doing some great things. And then I hit a wall. Compassion fatigue big time. And I remember sitting across from the desk at people. I remember thinking, I got 2 more and I got to go home. And the next person, I'd look and I'd be like, this is my last session. not even sensitive to the other individual sitting across from me. Brady, that's terrible. Absolutely. Because I wasn't honest with myself. Went and saw a counselor. Counselor helped me process some of these things, understanding so I could be truthful with myself. We have to be truthful with ourselves. If we can't, then how difficult is it going to be for us to encourage and empower other people to be truthful with themselves? How are we going to encourage them to be truthful with other people? Just looking to see if there's anything else I want to talk about. Self-care. Self-care is huge. Why? Because the idea of so many different things. We have so much more research out than when I graduated. And the idea of the well-being is to make sure that very last dynamic is to stay alive. You're putting so much time, energy, sweat, blood, and tears into this enrichment process, this academic process. Why? So that you can better yourself and people that you're going to be interacting with. And so that God can come and move in you and through you. Absolutely. Absolutely. So what does that self-care look like? I remember hearing from people early on, and we'd talk about this. They'd say, Brady, I get in the car, and from the moment I get into my car from the parking lot to the time I pull up at home, I speak in tongues. Awesome. One of the things I do is I take the senior group home. It takes about another 10 minutes to get home. It's about 30 miles an hour, a little bit traffic. It's not the highway. Why? Because after a long day, the last thing I want to do is deal with people on the highway. I don't have to deal with the idea of keeping up with traffic. I don't have to cause them frustrations because I want to go a little slower because of my day. So what do? Brady, that's really self-care. Yeah, it is. Because I roll down the windows, at least when it's not, 100 degrees or something like that. I get to hear the birds, feel the wind. Yeah, absolutely. Self-care is necessary and needed. So what do? Well, Brady, I'm not in that field yet. Right. Operative word is yet. So how do we get to the point where you're starting to think about that now? Do you go to the gym? No. Okay, that's fair. That's fine. Do you journal? Do you get to go get coffee with friends? What do you do that pours back into you, right? And we're going to learn about the idea of introversion and extroversions from Adler, right? The idea of, you're saying that those terminologies actually came from, there's a lot of the terminology of what we actually, people that don't even like psychology or counts or this process. Now, we've gotten a lot stronger. When I was in counseling, it was still looked really down upon. Now we're actually seeing a lot of individuals that would never come into counseling. They're coming into counseling. It is amazing. Why? The opportunity of getting objectivity, the opportunity of somebody being able to hear what you're going through and validating them. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. So, read on 19, the author talks a lot about self-care and the burnout prevention. Burnout prevention. And he even talks about the idea these pitfalls should be avoided as far as possible. I'm reading straight from the book by counselors who want to prevent burnout and grow and balance wellness. He says toxic supervisors and colleague support, little fun in life or work, unclear understanding of one's own needs, lack of professional development process that helps transform experience into greater competence and reduced anxiety, absence of energy-giving personal life. Inability to turn down unreasonable requests, accumulated effects in vicarious traumatization, personal relationships that are mainly one way with the self as giver or provider of caring, perfectionism and task at work, ambiguous professional losses that remain unresolved, need to be needed, that is strong professional success defined only in terms of client positive change and change or appreciation. Wow. Go through that list. Does any of that reflect when you read any of those? Does any of that Do you feel something? Do you feel something? And if so, what is that? What is that? He moves forward and talks about the recommendations that Mahoney, based upon the author, be gentle with yourself, honor your own process, get adequate rest. Rest is huge. Sleep. If we don't sleep, it puts friction on the body. The body is tremendous. How are we kind to the body? Well, I don't eat the best. I'm always having negative thoughts. I'm having negative emotions. These things impact the body. They put pressure. They put pressure on the body. Make yourself comfortable. How? What does that look like for you? Move your body often. Now they even have watches, to the point where I think if the watch has the sensor senses that the body's been down, sitting in a position, it kind of gives a buzz or something like that. Get up and get moving, right? The idea of allowing the energy to move within your body. Develop a ritual and transition for leaving work at the office, like I told you about my friend. The idea of, okay, she get in her car and speak in tongues on the way out. Receive regular professional massages. That's great if there's the opportunity of being able to afford. Cherish your friendships and intimacies with family, right? Be able to allow people to pour into you because you're pouring into so many individuals. Cultivate your commitment to helping. Honor the privilege of your profession. Ask for and accept comfort, help, and counsel, including personal therapy. Yes. One of the things that I'm seeing here lately is the idea of how counselors are going and seeing counselors. It's necessary. It's needed. When I first started my program, the idea of the program actually requiring us to go get counseling to see, one, the benefit of being able to receive counseling, but to the point of actually getting to feel what it's like being in the other chair. That I was prior to that. I had a lot of people that went through the same program, that thereafter, guess what? They were required to do that. They didn't like it, but the ones I talked with were like, wow, this is great. And I remember going through counseling for myself. And I remember the first time sitting on that couch, I thought, oh, this is what it's like being on the other side. And it took me a while to settle in. But there was so much of a benefit by being able to go and receive from the amazing individual that I got to receive from. Create a support system, network among your colleagues. Get to know the people that are going through these classes. Why? Because these may be the people that are in your field that you can connect with. Well, Brady, at a certain time, won't you know everything? No. I always tell people that this field is like nailing Jello to the wall. About the time that you think that you have it figured out, it shifts, it changes. There's new research, there's new orientations. I'm constantly, even though I've been in this field this long, I'm constantly reaching out to my old supervisor, getting his perspective, getting other people's perspectives. They're constantly contacting me. We're having these questions, these thoughts as new rules. The 1st of January rolls out, the board will implement new rules, and we're trying to figure out, okay, what's best? How do we implement them? So get you a network base, and the people that are in these classes that you're learning from, doing Blackboard discussions together, they could be tremendous in developing that. Enjoy yourself. Man, think about that. What do you like to do? What pours energy into you? Is it going by a lake if you're near a lake and watching the sailboats go by? Is it, going for ice cream? Is it going, for a walk? Is it, whatever it is? Enjoy yourself. Enjoy yourself. Follow your heart and embrace your spiritual seeing. The idea of getting connected with a church, the idea of getting connected with a small group, the idea of getting connected and making sure your spiritual life, the idea of who God is in you and the connection that you have, making sure that doesn't become hindered by the idea, well, I don't have time with that, I got to get to my next client. Make sure that you have time for yourself. I try to journal every morning. Try to do a quiet time. And again, this isn't about me. This is just if this is a benefit for you. 17 years in the church, outside the church. I wake up about 5, not because of anything other than just we've got a lot of different dynamics and trying to get my wife and my kiddos out of the house because they have a little bit of drive to their school. So we get up at 5. We do a little quiet time. We do a little working out. Then we're breakfast, getting ready, getting them out the door. And then my next thing that I do is I sit down and journal. And my journaling is usually a letter to God. Dear God, today I'm feeling, right now I'm thinking, boy, today was difficult. What do I journal? Your thoughts, your dreams, your wants, your desires, your frustrations. Make sure you embrace your spiritual seeking. The third part, and I won't go into too much of this, I'm going to let you read it, is the legal and ethical issues in counseling and psychotherapy. This is one of the reasons why a lot of people actually will determine, hey, Brady, do I become a counselor? There are other dynamics. There are life coaching. There are, even just the idea of no certification, just the idea of connecting with people and doing life with them, those type of things like that. But there are dynamics, that we have to be careful of. The difference between legal and ethical issues, you can read that for yourself on page 24. But for those of y'all that don't have your books yet, I'll go ahead and read it. It says a legal issue involves the law of a particular country, state, or province that the practice of counseling and of psychotherapy in that regional area or political entry. Okay, ethical issue are broader and encompass professional standards of rights and wrongs that guide the work of counselors and therapists, helping them enhance the well-being and the welfare of their clients and avoiding harm to them. Okay, the idea, different dynamics, but can an ethical dilemma get you in trouble as a counselor? Yes. Something that gets you in trouble with the law? Depending, right? Depending what it is. HIPAA, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. The idea, I remember having a counselor one time that she went and took a HIPAA training, and afterwards, I ran into her parking lot at the church one time, and I said, "Hey, how's your practice going?" And she's like, "I'm leaving the practice. I'm leaving the practice." I said, "Why?" Because HIPAA, I'm concerned that Brady, one infraction could cost you $1 million. I understand, but God's got you. You're good. You're a good counselor. Okay? Go through there and learn all the different principles and everything like that. Follow up with the rest of chapter 3 and part 1. And as a result of that, get into Blackboard when you have a chance and let us know about yourself. Again, I want to introduce myself to you, and I want you to introduce yourself to me. I want to know you through this process and however I can help. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, comments, whatever, multiple times, right? Doesn't hurt. Then please let me know. However I can help you through this process. If you're struggling because, again, the ideas of theories, Brady, okay, that's fair. Reach out to me. Either email me, email me, call me, whatever that looks like. However I can be of help, please let me know. Okay, part 1, week 1, discussion board 1, week 1. Here we come. It's going to be a great week. Welcome to TKU. It is a pleasure for me to get to walk alongside you during these next 7 weeks. My name is Brady Daniel, and I look forward to interacting with you and helping you through this through this semester. Have a great day, and blessings on your week. Bye-bye.